USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap. You broke the internet for a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have passed under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derick McDuff, and today we are going to be discussing one of the films, the second film in fact, from LAIKA Studios, and that is going to be ParaNorman. This is part of a LAIKA Retrospective that started over on my Patreon discussing Coraline. You can also listen to that episode here on the main feed as a bonus. But this is the first episode of Underrated where we're going to be discussing all of the films, all 5 of the films of LAIKA. But joining me today to discuss ParaNorman is the host of the Wild Mouse podcast, Taylor Bartle. How's it going, Taylor?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. I'm glad to be talking about this movie here with you. I've had it on my list for a while. I've been meaning to do this mini-series for a while. Excited to talk about this with you. I know you're more of a theme park guy, at least on your podcast, which everybody should go check out, Wild Mouse. I was just on an episode talking about the Jurassic World / Jurassic Park ride at Universal. Before we get too much into ParaNorman, what did you want to let the people know about yourself?
Well, I mean, in addition to doing Wild Mouse, I also have a horror movie podcast called the Grave Plot Podcast. And so ParaNorman is, kind of in that child horror realm. And so I always kind of like movies that are horror adjacent, but are also very kind of whimsical and fun. And so that's why I'm a big fan of ParaNorman. I went to the Museum of Pop Culture here in Seattle a little bit ago, and they had a whole LAIKA exhibit. So I've got some insight on there, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I will definitely have to talk about that at some point, because I did see that I went to the Mopop a few years back when I was in a wedding in Seattle, or in Washington. I flew out of Seattle, so I made sure to check out that museum. And, it was before that exhibit was there, but I think the exhibit's going to be, it's a moving exhibit, and it's going to be making its way down to the Academy Museum down here in LA at some point in 2026, so I'm going to definitely try and see that. But yeah, excited to have you here and talking about this one. Like you said, this is kid horror. It's very whimsical is a very good way to put it, as I think all the LAIKA movies are. But this one definitely kind of captures that. It's that perfect Venn diagram of like, it's the real world. It's like a world we recognize and stuff like that. It's not like the Box Trolls or anything where it's like total fantasy, but it's also got these fantastical elements of horror and fantasy in some ways. So I really enjoyed that. I think this is an incredible film. When I sent you my big list of underrated movies to talk about, you zeroed in on this one. Why was this your choice for underrated movie?
I mean, like I said, I always appreciate movies like this, or like Nightmare Before Christmas, or things that are kind of, starter horror for little kids. And so this one, it's one of my annual watches around Halloween season. Nice. I'll watch Halloween and Trick or Treat and all these like Terrifier, all these gory horror movies.
Okay, yeah.
But then of course I'll also watch ParaNorman. So
nice, yeah, and it's interesting you bring up that this is a Halloween rewatch for you, because this movie is going to be getting a 3D re-release in this Halloween. So just in a couple months from when this episode drops. So I'm definitely going to be checking that out when it comes out. I talked a lot about in the Coraline episode about 3D and how revolutionary LAIKA is for making Coraline in 3D and then making this in 3D. But yeah, so I'm excited to catch that, and I love this movie too. It had been a few years since I'd seen it. I have it on DVD, so I dusted that off and watched it, and I was just kind of really remembering, like, almost instantly, like, wow, this this is a good movie. Like, I remember why I bought this, why I liked this one so much. And yeah, like you said, it's very good starter horror, and like so many good horror movies, particularly zombie movies, there's a lot of great social commentary in this. And kind of reading about the film a little bit before we get started, and Chris Butler, who was he's the writer of the film and one of the co-directors, talked about how he felt like a lot of zombie movies have this social commentary running throughout them. You can look at like the old Romero films and everything, and he wanted to do something with that specifically for kids. And right from the very first shot of this movie, it feels like a love letter to that kind of era of zombie movie. And it's tongue in cheek, and it's making fun of it a little bit, but it's definitely also in a loving way. How did you being a big horror fan, how did you feel about those homages and the social commentary continuing in that vein of it?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up Romero. Obviously, Dawn of the Dead is the most famous of these films that's clearly all about consumerism.
Mm.
And then, Day of the Dead is clearly about war. And so, yeah, zombie movies are well known for having social commentary. And this one, I think, obviously, the ultimate message is about acceptance.
Yeah.
And you've got the whole backstory of, it's clearly a take on Salem, Massachusetts, and the witch trials. This whole town is just built around this. And then you've got Norman, who is just, a little off and different. And of course, he gets constantly made fun of. And I mean, jumping ahead, I also love just the little throwaway line of "You'll love my boyfriend."
Yes, that was so good. And like that was in like like that might seem like, oh, that's cool like that, but like in 2012 in a kids movie, that was crazy. Like I felt like that was super revolutionary for the time.
Yeah, it's like they don't make a big deal of it. It's never mentioned before, but he's, the big hunky guy, the big sexy guy that the girl wants. And then at the end, he's just like, "Oh, you'll love my boyfriend." And that's it. And it's just like, oh, that's so casual. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, it's not like this whole big drawn out moment. It's just like, oh, this like nice little thing at the end. And I don't know if you saw, but LAIKA recently released a thing where they finally like revealed like what the boyfriend looks like. They did like a sketch. They're like, they didn't obviously have one at the time the movie came out because he's just a concept of a line, but they like actually designed a boyfriend for Mitch. So I thought that was really cool that even years later they're still thinking about that. But yeah, that being in the movie, there's other things in the movie that are like one-off jokes or almost throwaway lines that I think are big social commentary bits, like the bit where the police officer says, "Don't fire at civilians. That's what the police are for." I was just like, holy shit, this movie is ACAB as hell. I love it. So like it felt like it was it was very much like getting away with stuff. Probably because it's LAIKA, because it's this not like minuscule studio, but a smaller studio. Like I said, they've only released 5 films. They've been around since 2012. It takes them a long time to make these movies. They're not the some of them make money. They all get nominated for Best Animated Feature, but they're not a huge studio, so they're able to get away with this stuff. They're able to put in that social commentary. They're also from Portland, where things are, that is, a lot more accepted. This kind of allows them to kind of have this weird, more socially conscious vibe to all their films. And I really appreciate it, where it's like somebody like, Disney or something feels like they would be terrified to put in lines like that, in 2025 or especially in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, there was supposed to be a gay character in Lightyear, and they ended up pulling it out before the movie ever even came out because of, the backlash on Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a bigger, I don't like to say a bigger risk, but I mean, I guess in a way that's what it is for a company like Disney. But yeah, like you said, LAIKA is, a little more under the radar. They can kind of push those boundaries a little bit more.
Yeah. And this speaking more about the things that this movie's tackling, you talked about, how Norman is this kind of weird kid and he doesn't always feel accepted. And I love the through line in the movie that everybody is just kind of mean to him or picking on him, whatever. It's mostly kind of out of fear. Like it's this running thing of like people fear what they don't understand. And a lot of the worst things come from ignorance and fear, and that's something that this movie is really hitting on. Like Norman's dad, like he loves him, but he's, like there's that bit where he's talking to a mom about like, oh, he's afraid, and like he's not afraid of you, he's just afraid of this, and obviously he's got the bully Alvin, who ends up kind of being an ally to him, and it's kind of like he's just this kind of dumb idiot who, once he more understands Norman, he becomes his friend, but he's just like, oh, he's a weird kid who thinks he talks to ghosts, I'm just gonna pick on him. And then you have the villains of the story, these undead 300-year-old zombies who did something horrible. They killed a child because they feared her, they did not understand her, and then she's now terrorizing the people of this town because she's afraid, because she was horrifically killed, and now she's kind of taking revenge because she's afraid. She's been wronged, and these people still don't understand her. And I love that this movie gets to, once you understand something that you were once afraid of, it's not scary anymore, and it's something that is probably can be a very good thing. So I really thought that was the real core of this movie. What did you think about any of that stuff?
Yeah, what's one of the craziest parts about this movie, and what's just amazing storytelling, is there's no like true villain. There's no super villain. There's no one who's evil. Like, everyone who did something bad had their reasons. And whether they were good reasons or bad reasons, they thought they were doing the right thing at that time.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's really interesting to, now you've got these zombies who are coming back because they feel bad for what they did, and they're trying to right a wrong. And then you've got the little girl who is causing all this chaos, but she's doing it because she's scared and because she's angry because of what they did to her. And so while everyone is clashing, it's all because they think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like the townspeople are like rioting and stuff like that, but that's just because they're like afraid of zombies, and they start like burning down the church, and they don't understand the kids are in there. Everyone is so reactionary and so just driven by this like gut instinct of fear. And Norman is really the only one, I guess, other than his friend who kind of accepts him, Neil, who's great, by the way, who is kind of, he starts to accept them, and Norman realizes, I have to go and not just kind of placate this 300-year-old ghost of witch that, like his uncle, Mr. Pendergast, had been doing. Instead of just telling her a bedtime story and just like, okay, we're gonna just put this away for another year, and then next year we'll tell her another bedtime story, just put her to sleep again, which is what everybody wants to do, because once again, nobody understands. They don't understand how to actually truly like talk to her. They're just she's scary, we're gonna put her away for another year and deal with it again next year. He really comes to this place of like, oh no, I'm going to accept you, I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to try and like make a genuine connection with you and essentially end the curse. And I love that you talk about, the zombies who they like did something horrible and unspeakable, and they're not necessarily like forgiven or anything in that, but they've come to a place where they're like, we know we did something awful, and they're trying to make amends for that in a way. And I thought that was a really like interesting poetic ending for them too, and for all of the characters, and for Norman and his grandma, and honestly, yeah, this movie, there's just so much thematically that I thought was really important, and it does something that a lot of the LAIKA films, all of the LAIKA films do, where they're taking these themes and they're showing you them in a unique way that really they could only do with this stop motion. I loved the whole design of this movie, how everyone is just kind of a little weird, a little off, even like cars, or like everything's asymmetrical and people's noses aren't straight. What did you think about the look of this film?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got Norman's hair is kind of the standout that everyone, it's the first thing you see when you look at the poster. Because he's just got his hair just goes straight up. Yeah, like the shape of a lot of the people is very kind of Pixar-esque, where all the women have like huge hips, and like the dad has this big long face with this tiny little goatee, and like a big long but skinny nose. And so yeah, it's all kind of, it's very human, but it's also it's almost like Salvador Dali.
Yes,
Like it's
that's
all
a good way to put it.
recognizable, but it's just a little off. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really impressed, rewatching it this time. A lot of the stuff they were able to do with that animation, speaking from a more technical side, like there's this moment when near the beginning where you see a lot of the main characters like in a picture, and it kind of like zooms through the picture, and then the picture becomes, the scene, which is something like, oh, you can do that in animation. Like that's something Disney figured out in like the 50s and stuff. But like to see that in stop motion, I was like, holy shit, that was really fucking cool. Because for so many years, stop motion, claymation, which would eventually evolve into, the kind of stop motion that we get today, was like locked down. Like it was, you have like the camera doesn't really move or anything. You just have people walking around. And I watched this whole panel that some of the executives on LAIKA did, and one thing they talked about a bunch is that they have artists collaborating with technologists in order to kind of tell this story that they want to tell.
Yeah, I mean, so like talking about the LAIKA exhibit, one of the things that I really kind of struck me was like this isn't claymation. It's not like a little sculpture that they can kind of tweak. It's different faces that they take off and put on. And so they have just thousands, if not millions, of different faces for each character. They just swap out to make them move a certain way. Just the attention to detail. I noticed when I was watching today, like when Norman is in the courtroom, eyes are just kind of like darting around. Mm-hmm. It's just like that's such a small detail that must have taken just so long to do, but it adds so much because it's like if you're in that situation, you're not just going to be staring straight ahead. Your eyes are going to be kind of darting and very nervous, and so I really kind of appreciated those really small details.
Yeah, the attention to detail in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. Like that's the reason that these movies take so long to make, is because they have whole teams of people working for years on doing this, because they have to like put so much detail into every shot. Is such a long, painstaking process, as we are seeing other animation houses move away from, like, streamline their process, make things simpler to animate. These guys are still doing it the old-fashioned way, or not even the old-fashioned way, like this other way that, is mainly gone. You don't really have that many places still doing stop motion, certainly not to this degree of, I guess, competence and just the way everything is so precise and exact. I mean, they maybe Aardman, and then Netflix will come out with a few things a year, but even those studios like Aardman, will do other things that aren't stop motion nowadays. They still do like Wallace and Gromit and stuff like that, but they have other things they do too. Whereas, and I guess LAIKA is going to be making a live action movie at some point, but it's still so impressive that they're putting this amount of detail into every single frame. They have so many characters moving all at the same time. These people are taking hours and hours. There's just teams of animators that will work for days and days and days for just seconds. And so the amount of labor and work and love that goes into this is really impressive. And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to talk about LAIKA, is it's this perfect kind of marriage of this artistic desire and this kind of new technology that can make that possible. And I already talked about like artists meeting technologists. One of the things that I want to shout out in this movie, that was a really big technical leap forward, was that this is the first movie to have a 3D printer print color faces. Because before this, everything would, if you go back to like Nightmare Before Christmas, while that's a very, very impressive movie, it's a lot of the stuff is a lot more limited. There's going to be fewer characters in scenes. There's going to be fewer expressions that people can make because you had to hand make those. Then you jump ahead to Coraline, they were 3D printing things, but they were still limited because they couldn't do color. So they had to like hand paint all of the freckles on Coraline's cheek, and if one's off by like a millimeter, it's going to mess everything up. Whereas now they are able to 3D print thousands of faces for all of these characters, and they have so much more freedom because they don't have to have years and years and years of handcrafting and hand painting these faces. They can print them out and swap them. That's still a lot of work, and they still do things post to like tweak it, like, you know, the line, they take out the lines where the faces connect and stuff like that. And it's interesting if you watch Wendell and Wild, because Henry Selick specifically left those in intentionally. But there's a lot of cool stuff they do, and even stuff like having the ghost be transparent. You know, like that scene where John Goodman or Mr. Pendergast sticks his like hand through his chest, where he's like a ghost floating above his own body. That stuff is all so cool. What do you think about all the technology that went into this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how they did like the ghost kind of stuff, or like when they're floating. I don't know how they did any of that. That's, you know, way above my pay grade, obviously. But yeah, it's so impressive, the stuff that they can do, and it's also smooth too. Like, there's some stop motion animation that still has that kind of Rankin Bass look, where it almost looks like it's in like a time lapse or something. But yeah, the stuff that they're able to do, the ghost thing in particular, I don't know how they make them look transparent. I assume it's some kind of computer effect, and how they make them float. And like when Mr. Pendergraft comes out of the toilet.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you see his face in the toilet and then it kind of like squeezes out. I don't know how they do anything like that. Yeah, it's really impressive to think that this is all corporeal things that are out there in the world, but they're also incorporating this technology to make it look like they're floating or they're transparent or they're coming out of a toilet, whatever the case may be. It's very impressive.
Yeah, looking at like some of the stuff they did in some of the behind the scenes things that I've been watching is really interesting, because a lot of times, like when someone's floating or something, they'll have them be kind of like attached to like this mechanical arm or crane. That it's like, because a lot of these, they'll be shot in different parts against like a green screen. They'll have the arm will be green screened, so they'll just green screen that out. But then they'll also do really low tech stuff. Like there's that scene where like one of the things that's incredibly difficult to animate in stop motion is water. And there's that scene where the water comes in when he's like on the toilet or whatever, and like you see the water slip over Alvin's, you know, stall, and that's just KY jelly that they used. So I think that's really cool that they're combining the old with the new. And one thing that they said in that same panel was they use technology as an aid and not a replacement. So like they fully embrace all these technologies, but it's to help out the story they're already telling. And, you know, that's a point I bring up a lot on this show, like with stuff like Jurassic Park and stuff. Like CG isn't inherently bad. It's not, you know, and this technology is not a bad thing, as opposed to, you know, practical effects. Each has their own merits, each has their own uses. But when you just use CG instead of for everything, instead of like using it to aid the parts that are practical, the parts that you can do physically on the set, I think that's where you start to get into trouble. And that's why LAIKA has succeeded so much in terms of at least people like really appreciating their films for their art is because they do that.
Yeah, CGI and, you know, and now AI is meant to do, like you said, it's to aid, to cover seams, to maybe add small details that just don't quite work in a physical world. Yeah, it's not meant to just build a monster and, you know, now you got your actor maybe looking at a tennis ball, if even that, and just trying to act off that. So yeah, it's really cool that they're still doing old school practical effects. I love creative stuff like that KY thing. I love those old school practical effects and the different things that they come up with. I used to want to be a Foley artist when I was a kid because I just found that fascinating.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I love all that stuff too. You know, it's interesting. I was just watching, you know, because as of recording this, it's right after Friday the 13th, and I went to a theater and watched the original one on the big screen last night. And I was just like, man, there's parts of it that are very dated, obviously, but I was also just like, it's really impressive that Tom Savini was able to do this with like the absolute shoestring budget that he had. So I really appreciate all that kind of stuff, and especially, you know, here in the LAIKA movies, because they also, it's interesting, they do a lot of this new technology stuff to harken back to other kinds of animation like that, or things we associate more with animation, like the, you know, squash and stretch, where like there's a part where like, you know, Mr. Pendergast's face is getting kind of smushed, and you know, you would in the past do that with like normal animation. It's very easy to do, or like claymation, you would kind of smush the clay up, but you can't really do that with like the more, you know, rigid models that they use now. So a lot of times they will use CG to put that kind of stuff in to make it seem more. That's also why, like, one of my big problems with, for example, like the Pokemon video games nowadays is like they're all 3D models and they lose some of that like the sprite stuff. And I think the same thing happens when you go to a different style of animation like this, but they brought it back in by using this technology. There's that incredible scene where at the end the ghost is her, was it Abby, is that right? Her face is kind of like distorting and going all these different ways, and they did make models where like her face is like splitting into two faces, doing all these things. But there's some stuff that you just can't do with that, where like her face is essentially like turned into like a Z. So they like put those both in there together, and at any given moment you can't tell, oh, here's where they're using a model, and here's where they're like using a model that's been altered with CG, or they might just use a bit of it. It's so well sprinkled throughout the movie. All those effects look so cool. All the stuff they're doing with green screen so that they can shoot from all these interesting angles and zoom. It's all really great, because it is all, once again, really in service of the story that they are telling. It's not impressive for the sake of being impressive. It's impressive for the sake of enabling storytellers.
I mean, you've got the whole scene in like the parallel universe or whatever when he confronts Aggie, actually, and it's, you know, like she looks like the Human Torch or something. Like her hair is all lightning, and there's just like these green clouds swirling all over the place in the background, and Norman is jumping from, you know, chunk of earth to chunk of earth, and it's just like, how do they do this with this kind of animation? And so, yeah, it is, you know, something like a green screen or however it is they do it. But it's just so fantastical to see this actual physical puppet jumping around in these floating pieces of rock in a giant, basically, nothingness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that breaks my brain a little bit. Like, I'll be watching it and I'll keep forgetting, like, oh no, they did this. They hand animated every single second, because you are so immersed in it. Unlike some of those like older ones that you watch, then there's a charm to those where you can really, but you just forget. You like will be watching this and it's like you either forget or you're just like, how did they possibly do this? Like it's something where I like on an intellectual level can like watch like the behind the scenes and see it. But then you watch it all and it's like, okay, somebody moved this. But then I'm like, I don't understand. Like my brain doesn't get it. Like I'm watching this and I know that somebody animated this by hand and did like 1,000 things to it, but I can't even look at this and see imagine the process of that, because it's so intricate and intense.
Right.
But yeah, like, so, you know, we talked about the story. We talked about how technically impressive this was. I had I think I had the same experience watching this the first time as I did this time, where I'm watching it and I'm like enjoying it. I'm like, this is pretty good. You know, I really like this movie. Like I talk about, like I'm right back in it again. But, you know, as it's going along, I'm like, this is good, but it's not necessarily like Coraline, which is, you know, at the time that was my only touchstone for LAIKA. And obviously, you know, I know it comes from Focus. They do a lot of good stuff. I'm interested by their kind of collaboration, but I'm really comparing it to Coraline a lot in my mind. And I'm like, okay, this is cool, but it's not quite that. But then something happens that lasts like 20 or so minutes where I'm just like, this is incredible. I think this movie has one of the most fantastic endings I've ever seen. Like, you know, it's that scene we already talked about where Norman is kind of talking to the witch, because instead of like having a final showdown with some evil entity, it's just about him talking her down. It's about him accepting her. And obviously it looks incredible too, but the whole finale of this movie blew me away. What did you think about the end of this movie?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, there's no true villain. Like nobody has evil intentions. So you've got this big climactic scene where Norman has to, he's fighting her essentially, but he's not, physically fighting her. He's trying to tell her, yes, what happened to you was terrible. It's inexcusable. But what you're doing now is not helping anything. And so he's got to talk her down and basically come down to her level and make her understand that she has every right to be angry, but she doesn't have the right to take it out on everyone else. It's this big climactic battle that has no fighting whatsoever. The only thing close to like fighting is Norman getting thrown into a tree a couple times.
Yeah, exactly. And then, it's such a great finale. And then I love the kind of quaint ending, how everybody's kind of like learned to accept Norman and accept each other a little bit more. And, there's that bit where Norman's dad kind of like looks over the couch and is like, oh, is she here right now? And it's one of the last lines of the movie is, hi, Mom. And I thought that was so nice. And yeah, like we already talked about how great that kind of like, surprise, like, hey, Mitch is actually, a gay character. I thought, that's a great moment. And yeah, just a really, really great ending for the movie.
Yeah, when the dad sits next to the ghost of the grandma and they both go, so what's happening now? Just in unison. It's great. And Elaine Stritch, rest in peace. She was absolutely fantastic. I loved her in everything I ever saw her in. Yeah,
she's so good. And this is one of those movies that you're just like, every time somebody talks, you're like, oh shit, that's McLovin. Like, oh, that's Anna Kendrick. And I love Cody Schmidt-McPhee. Like, I think he's a really good, talented, at the time, young actor. Like he's almost 30 now, but just a great cast. Jeff Garlin, Leslie Mann as the mom, really great. Of course, you mentioned Elaine Stritch, and then Bernard Hill as the kind of spooky, the ghost, the main quote unquote antagonist. And then even if you look at like the lower cast, there's like some names that you're like, oh, Ariel Winter's in this. I think I don't know if it's before Modern Family.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, so I think it speaks to the level of that, like, people want to be in these movies. People.
And John Goodman. Don't forget John Goodman.
Of course.
John Goodman deserves to be in that upper echelon of actors. Like, he is so good.
He really is truly just phenomenal. And even when it's just like his voice, it's that John Goodman gravitas that he just brings to a role where he's funny, but he's also just like, it feels really important whenever he's talking. So yeah, just really, really loved. I just wanted to shout all those voice actors out.
Yeah, and the voice actor of Salma, for the longest time, I thought it was Aubrey Plaza.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and then Alex Borstein
like,
too is in this.
Oh yeah, Alex Borstein is a great voice actress and just hilarious in general too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh yeah, I was saying the Selma character is just a very Aubrey Plaza character too. So
yeah, that checks out. But yeah, man, any final thoughts here on ParaNorman?
I mean, like I said, I watch this every Halloween. It's really a great movie. Norman's bedroom looks how my bedroom would probably look if I had my druthers when I was a kid. He's just got zombie posters all over the wall. I love it. His ringtone is the Exorcist theme. Little
Halloween,
details
Halloween,
like
right?
that.
Is it? Wait, is it the Exorcist?
It's I'm second guessing myself. I think you're right. I think it is Halloween, actually.
Yeah, because then he like looks outside and they do the shot from Halloween where he's like standing by, like Neil is standing by the things, and and he's wearing a hockey mask, which is Jason, so they do mix it a little bit there, but it's a pretty great shot. Yeah. It's so well done in every single way. The story itself is just amazing, and then it's done with such great animation. Like we said, the voice acting is fantastic. I have very little qualms about this movie.
the big climactic scene is a little cheesy at times. Just because when I'm watching a horror movie, sometimes it'll be like really kind of grounded and spooky and really kind of visceral. And then at the end, they'll like go into an alternate dimension and fight a demon, and I'm just like, what happened here? Where are we going?
That's fair.
I feel like this is a little bit of that. This is a little bit of that, but it's not quite to that level. Especially since it's animation, it kind of gets a pass.
Right.
But other than that, I think the movie, top to bottom, is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I would really agree with you. Love this movie. It's one of those movies that I'm bummed I didn't watch it for so long. Definitely gonna have to give it a rewatch in 3D, like I did with Coraline last year, which was phenomenal to go see.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see that, because
Mm-hmm.
this kind of animation in 3D would. I'm usually not a big 3D person, but I think it would work really well with this animation style.
Yeah. Have you seen any of these Leica movies in 3D?
I have not.
Okay, because I've only seen, I think, Coraline. I might have seen this one when it came out in 3D. I can't remember. It's been so long, but like it is a really, really cool experience. Like, and especially having, I talk about it a lot in the Coraline episode, so I won't repeat myself too much. But like that experience of watching Coraline in 3D was so freaking phenomenal, and it does things, like you said, because it's stop motion, that other things could not do in 3D. And it's painstaking because not only do you have to shoot everything, you have to shoot everything twice, because they shot with like DSLR cameras instead of like traditional James Cameron 3D cameras. But like so it makes that long process even longer. It's really, you really do appreciate it watching it. So I'm gonna check this one out for sure when it drops the re-release in a couple months here. But yeah, man. My last question.
Awesome.
Yeah. My last question for you is, what is Leica as a studio like? What do they mean to you?
I mean, so far it's been banger after banger after banger. So if I see Leica's name on a movie, I'm probably going to see it. Although I will say I haven't seen Missing Link?
Missing Link, yeah. Nobody has,
I have
apparently.
not seen that one yet. So apparently.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to check that one out. But go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that's gonna be the last one in the series, because it's obviously their most recently released movie, and I even had trouble kind of finding a guest for that because nobody had seen it. But I'm excited to talk about it because it's a movie I quite enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, it's about Bigfoot, right?
Yeah. Zach Galifianakis plays Bigfoot, and it's kind of charming in the way only like a movie could be.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love, starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo Coffee Machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista-quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo Pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so obviously Bigfoot is near and dear to my heart. So it's kind of surprising I haven't seen it. So I'll definitely have to check it out. But yeah, I just think Leica has a 100% success rate to this point. So even if I see a trailer and I'm just like, that doesn't really look like my style. If it's a Leica movie, I'll probably check it out. Just if nothing else, just because it's going to look great.
Right. Yeah. Obviously that's a given, and there's, they really care about their stories. And since you mentioned being from the Pacific Northwest, I feel like maybe more than any other studio, live action or animation, Leica is so tied to that region. Obviously, Coraline takes place in Portland. Missing Link, like we've mentioned, has that. Their next film, Wildwood, is what it's called, I believe. Yeah, is going to be set in like kind of a fictional version of a like famous park up there. So as probably my only person who's going to be on this miniseries from the Pacific Northwest, I didn't know if you wanted to speak to that at all.
It's funny, I didn't even realize they were from Portland, and it's funny that we picked the one movie that takes place in the Northeast.
Yeah. At least we didn't talk about Kubo. That one's very far away.
I don't even know that one.
Oh, Kubo and the Two Strings? That's a great movie. I highly recommend checking that out.
Okay, yeah, I'm not even familiar with that, but I do love the in ParaNorman in particular, the just the sets. Like the whole town of Blythe Hollow is such a kind of fun thing. It's one of those things where you look in the background and you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. Because, like I said, it's clearly based on Salem, Massachusetts. It had its own kind of witch trial thing, and so everything there is about witches. The sign for the town they're hanging a witch, and she's got this huge grin on her face, like, woohoo, I'm so happy to be hung. I think there's a restaurant called Witchy Wieners. Like,
yes,
there's just all these
showing up.
Cute little things in the background.
Yeah, it's I'm somebody who, I love the Pacific Northwest. It's somewhere that I've always thought about. Maybe I'll end up there someday. Whenever I've taken a trip up there, I've really enjoyed it. I've been to a wedding up there, like I mentioned, and I've just visited some friends and stuff, and I love it. So I really love all the vibes. But yes, definitely go circle back and check out Kubo and the Two Strings. Which I'm going to be talking about here. Of course, as I'm talk about, that's one of the 4 other films from Laika, and it's actually directed by Travis Knight. I think it's his first movie. I'll talk about it when I get to that episode. But yeah, Travis Knight, who is one of the reasons Laika exists. Because that is one thing about, and I touched on it in the Coraline episode, but that Laika exists and they are able to make these movies and take so many years. It's because of the Knights, because Travis Knight's dad is Phil Knight, who owns Nike, and there's some things people might not love about how they originally came into having the studio, but Travis Knight was an animator. That was his goal, was he wanted to make stop motion movies. That was his passion. And because he has a dad who owns Nike, they were able to buy this studio and make these really great films that they are passionate about. And because they're always going to have shoe money, they can keep making these movies, even if movies like, Missing Link might have sunk another studio, because that movie, while it was very, very good, did not do well financially. And these movies do okay financially, typically speaking, but there's a reason I'm talking about them on Underrated. So yeah, curious to, it'll be interesting to dive more into that in the future. But they also, bring in outside great collaborators too, like the directors that we talked about here. I mentioned Chris Butler, and I also need to shout out Sam Fell, who he co-directed the movie with. But yeah, man, this was a blast. Thank you so much for being on, Taylor.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, before you leave, where can people hear more of your stuff, listen to your podcast?
So yeah, I host Wild Mouse, which is a podcast all about theme parks. Each episode focuses on a different ride or restaurant or show or whatever, and also has a different guest every episode. You can find that wherever you listen to your podcasts or at wildmousepodcast.com, and on social media, except for Twitter, at Wild Mouse Podcast. And then I also host the Grave Plot podcast with my best friend Tony, which is a horror movie podcast. It's currently on hiatus, but we're going to be coming back this October. Each episode features horror movie news as well as 2 movie reviews, and it's a lot of fun. And you can find that, again, wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search for Grave Plot Podcast or at graveplotpodcast.com.
Awesome. I definitely need to check that one out too. I'm excited to listen to that, because I love Wild Mouse. I had a ton of fun being on it, and I listened to a bunch of other episodes because I'm a big theme park nut. But excited to check out the other one as well. So this exciting stuff. And yeah, if anybody out there wants to hear some more podcast stuff from me, I do a couple other podcastings as well. You can find all those by going to underratedmoviepodcast.com, where I have links to all of that. It's also on Underrated Movie Podcast on all the social media. I co-host the podcast Midnight Film Society with my buddy Damien, where we talk about more recently released stuff, movie trends, movie news. I also do a Patreon podcast, which I talked about here, which was, of course, had the Coraline episode released to the main feed. You can go back and listen to that, but there's also a ton of other stuff On that show, I talk about movies that originally were released in 3D and see how they hold up in 2D. It's called Across the Second Dimension. I do a new podcast every year for the Patreon that releases once a month. Last year's was a sports movie podcast called Underdogs. So do a few other things as well. Just once again, head to Underrated Movie Podcast to check all that stuff out. And you can also get episodes a week early and ad-free if you want to give just $1 a month over on the Patreon. But yeah, thanks again everyone for listening, and thank you, Taylor, for coming on. This has been a blast.
Thank you. I'll have to check out that 3D one, because that's I always, whenever I watch, like, me and my co-host Tony, we call them boner moments, when there's clearly something that was designed to be in 3D, because it's like, coming right at you.
Yeah.
And so watching it in 2D, it's always just like, what is happening? Why is this going on?